It's the How to Shoot Hybrid podcast discussing topics around photography, videography, and running a business. My name's Jules, and I'm here with my co-host Kieran. We really appreciate you being here with us. How have you been doing, mate? How's the week been in general?
Busy, same as usual.
Yeah. You said you were doing the bathroom.
Oh, yeah.
I was doing a shed, you were doing a bathroom.
Bit of DIY, eh?
So it's been like proper DIY.
So if anyone's looking for a bathroom installer or a shed builder, you know where to go.
We've got you covered.
Yeah, I'll show you the aftermath of the bathroom after.
Yeah, maybe we can share some pictures of our DIY escapades.
You can all rate us out of 10 or something.
Stories. Yeah. So on this episode of the podcast, we're going to be talking about lenses, and the angle is going to be, zooms versus primes, or what is the best lens or lens combination for shooting hybrid. And me and you both shoot differently. We both have a different thing on that. So hopefully it'll be a good discussion and people will get something from that. And I'm sure that there's lots of people listening who will have their own, choices when it comes to lenses. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to hear what other people think. Absolutely. But before we kind of go right into it, here's the first question. What's your favorite lens you've ever used and why?
Okay, mine would be, funnily enough, so this is my favourite lens, yet I haven't got it now. So my favourite lens, bearing in mind I'm shooting on the Fuji system, was the 16-55. So the equivalent, I think, is what, a 24-70?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So that was, that was a fab lens. Telephoto, zoom. Yeah, and the only reason I got rid of that is because I had that when I first started out. Kind of got sideswept into the, you have to shoot prime situation, and yeah, it's an expensive lens, so I've not really got it back now, and it's a bit of a weird one for me, that one, because even though it was the best lens, it's in that range now where I shoot with the 23 and the 56, which is the 35 and the 85 equivalent to full frame. So that kind of covers most of the range from the 16 to 55 telephoto, and I'm kind of used to using them primes now. So do I go back and spend the £1,000 on the 16 to 55 again? I don't know. Sometimes I'm tempted, but it was probably the sharpest lens I've ever had. Yeah. Right. What about you?
And yeah, so my favourite, it depends. Okay. So I really I've got an 85 1.4. So I've got the original Sony G Master 85 1.4, and that lens is so slow to autofocus. It makes loads of noise when it autofocuses. It's got it's one of the first lenses that Sony made, the first really good lenses that Sony made. And they must use some really slow motors in it, because technology was different 5-10 years ago. And it goes, you can hear it. That's a really interesting noise for me to make on a podcast, isn't it? But I love the images that come out of the lens. And it's definitely, when I use that lens and I get a really nice image with it, whether it's photo or video, I kind of look at it and think, why don't I use this lens more? And I even think, should I get a 135mm 1.8? Because, if I like this lens and I like the image that comes out of this, maybe I'd like it even better as a tighter focal length with more compression in it. And so that lens is kind of one of those lenses I really enjoy using for that reason. And every time I use it, I get excited. But my go-to everyday lens that I use, and now is on my camera nearly all the time for everything I do, whether it's weddings or commercial shoots, is a 35 to 150 Tamron. I think I might have talked about it before.
I think you briefly mentioned it.
So it's only been out, it's only been out a couple of years. It was only for Sony. They're just starting to roll it out. I think they've just brought it out in the last few months for Nikon. I don't know whether it'll come to Canon and Fuji and other manufacturers, but that lens is just, I could shoot a whole wedding just with that one camera body and that lens. And be able to get everything you want. So that's kind of my favorite lens now, but I do love that 85. Yeah.
See, I've got the equivalent of the 50mm, and that is a really nice lens, but that's got a really short shutter speed. Wow, slow autofocus on it. There you go. I'm sure everyone else didn't know what I meant, but so that's got a really slow autofocus. However, it's really nice. So I kind of have to pick and choose when I want to use that. So for like portraits, if they're really slow and stuff like that, I could get that out and use it. But for the majority of the day, because weddings are kind of fast moving anyway, aren't they? It's just not quick enough to focus on a subject that's walking back down the aisle and whatnot. It's missing shots. So
yeah, well, you've got to nail it. Yeah.
So as much as that is a nice one, it's kind of if that one worked, autofocus was as fast as the rest, I'd probably use that one the majority of the time. But unfortunately, it's not.
So it's funny you say that, because I had a 55 1.8, and that's one of the, like, the Sony lenses are ridiculously expensive, and that lens, the 55 1.8, I think it's a Zeiss lens, is a really small compact lens. Quite a lot of people use it, and it's one of the cheaper ones. It's really compact, and it's like, you know, it's what you'd want from a lens, really. But I had it and I just never used it, and so I ended up selling it. But I've been on the fence for so long about either buying that again or the 50 1.2. There's something about, you know, I don't know. I've never had a 1.2 lens, and in full frame, I imagine that looks pretty sweet. So I've thought about getting that, but that's like brand new. It's 1,700-1,800 quid, and even used, you know, it's been out for ages. Even used, it's like 1,300, 1,400 quid.
It's a pretty penny.
So it's just a lot of money, isn't it? It's a lot of money to spend on one lens that you might not use very often.
It is. So when you first started out, were you using telephoto or were you using prime lenses? Or were you using a mix?
Well, when I first started, like, you know, remember the wedding where I met you, and that's like my second ever paid job. I'm using, at that point, I think I had like a 55 to 210, or I don't know. It was like some really shit kit lens. And I think I had that I had some kind of, that was it, because I was using crop sensor cameras then. I was using the kind of crop sensor Sony cameras. So I had a 35 1.8, which would have been more like a 50. And I just used that for all my kind of nice looking shots. And then I think I used that kit lens for everything else. And I might have by then, I'm not sure, I might have bought the 18-105 zoom for APS-C, and that I've still got, because I've got one of my cameras is an APS-C camera, and I use that lens on it all the time, because it's perfect for, you know, like a back of the aisle camera, because it goes from 18 to 105, so I've got a massive range there. So if I need something wider, that's great. It's f4, but it's all right. I would say that for anybody starting out, that's a perfect lens to get. Yeah, so that's kind of where I started. And then I still had the crop sensor cameras, and I started buying full frame lenses. So before I invested in like the really expensive cameras from Sony, I started buying more expensive lenses. So I got a 24-70 2.8, which was a full frame lens. And once I got that was my workhorse. But I still thought, I know I need to get some primes. So I got the 85 prime, I got the 35 prime 1.4s. And then I went a bit crazy and I started buying. At one point I had about 14 lenses.
Did you? Bloody hell, someone made money that year.
Yeah, I bought them all second hand. I don't think apart from maybe one lens, I think that I've only ever bought one lens brand new.
Same here, really. Yeah, I don't really buy them brand spanking, but yeah.
So I would say that even though I've had the primes, I have gravitated more towards using zooms, particularly as I think if I was just doing one thing, photo or video, I think primes would be easier for me to kind of use. But I just find that when I'm trying to get a lot of footage or a lot of images in a short space of time, and obviously you're getting both, you want to, especially if you're shooting solo, you're trying to get both photo and video. So it's for speed.
Absolutely, yeah.
For the, you know, So that 35 to 150, for instance, you know, I can get some really close up tight details. So like, you know, hands, feet, dresses flowing in the wind, you know, really tight kind of shots above kind of shoulders, and kind of, you know, the stuff that you want to cut into a film, those kind of sequency shots.
All the B-roll.
And then you've also got, you know, quickly you can zoom out and get a bigger scene, which is much wider. So for me, when you're trying to get photos that are wide and zoomed, and you're trying to get video shots that are wider and zoomed, to be able to create those sequences or to make that gallery look more, you know, fuller, as in like I get more of a feel of the day. I get people close up laughing, enjoying themselves, but I also get to see that there were lots of people there. Then that 35 to 150 allows you to do that much quicker than switching between lenses.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Like one of the things, this is why I use zooms. So I started off doing mainly video. And what I found when I first started was, let's say 100 weddings I did, I'd be working alongside photographers, and some of those photographers would be really good photographers that had been doing it for years, and they were really good. But I'd be like, why the fuck are they changing their lenses all the time? And I was thinking, that looks, you know, they look stressed, let alone the fact that it is actually stressful, and you might make a mistake here. Like if you don't get that lens on in time, and I know they're good because they've been doing it a long time and they're quick, but if something doesn't quite work out and you're switching lenses as someone's walking down an aisle, or
not the time to change your lens,
two things. So I just saw a lot of that, and I thought, I don't really want to do that. I don't get it. You know, I don't get why. So, I mean, I always would have more than one body, and I'd probably, you know, I know that's probably how you're going to say you shoot, is like a different lens on two different bodies, which is the way I think it should be done. But I saw people changing lenses all the time, and I just thought, fuck it, I think zooms are better. And
that's the way you went.
It worked better for me, so that's it.
I mean,
what about you?
I can see the benefit in both, really. I mean, when I first started out, I had the 16 to 55, and I think I can't remember what the other lens I had. It might have been the 85 that I had. So I had, it was like telephoto and a prime together. But I think for me, the reason I went to prime solely really was, it wasn't like the pressure of like seeing everyone else is shooting primes. It was more the fact that like I got to a point in my work where I didn't really feel like I was progressing. So to take the primes on, it felt like I was entering a different challenge when I went to weddings, because rather than just like standing in the corner, zooming in, zooming out and shooting all these different angles, I actually had to be in there and like be in front of people's faces. And I think from that point of view, the primes actually built my confidence up, especially like being a documentary photographer, or the majority of it's documentary. When I first started out, I thought, well, that kind of means you just stand in the corner of a room and zoom in and capture people's reactions and stuff. But when I got to the point of using primes, I couldn't really do that, especially with like the 35mm. So it actually made me go walking about and shooting more. And I think if anyone is starting out, I would recommend using a couple of primes. I think it builds your confidence up. It makes you think more, doesn't it? About where you need to be, how you need to get the shot, how close, how far, etc. But now I think now I'm at this stage, like 10 years down the line, I've been shooting with primes for probably a good 7 years of that 10 years. I mean, like, you know, I'm looking now into looking at like the zoom lenses again. So yeah, I think there's a benefit to both, really. I think the primes are good to build your confidence up, and obviously they're usually a bit quicker autofocus. And I mean, like, to me, I've got no problem. My issue is now, especially with the hybrid, and I think we discussed this in one of the other episodes, when it comes to like the speeches and the ceremony, if I'm just shooting on two primes, a 23 and a 56, the I'll stop saying that and I'll start saying the 35 and 85, because I think most people are. So when I'm shooting the 35 and 85, the issue with that is, especially when I'm shooting hybrid, that I'm almost going to be guaranteed to be in one of them shots if I've got a static camera set up somewhere. So for me, having a telephoto would actually be quite useful. So yeah, I don't know. I think
as in you want to be able to zoom in so that you don't have to get as
so I
close
could crop myself out
in your own shot.
Yeah, Because a lot of the time when I'm shooting the top table and stuff, I want to be quite close with them with like my 35mm or even the 85mm to grab some reactions of the guests and stuff. I want to be quite close. But if I'm being quite close, that kind of means that I'm also going to be in the shot of the video as well on the static camera set up on the side or the back or whatnot. But if I had a telephoto and I could zoom in just to the top table, I could probably get away with that. So yeah.
I think that's something I probably, because I've been using zooms for so long, I think it's something that I probably don't even think about. I only probably recognize it when I'm working with a photographer who's shooting primes and they go really close to the top table. And it doesn't bother me if I'm doing video, it doesn't bother me because again, I've got really long zoom-in tight lenses. So I can just reframe and zoom past them if they are, as long as they're not stood up really tall right in front of the lens. But I get that because I think, well, I don't need to get that close to get those close shots. But if I was on, say, a 35 or a 24, or like even an 85, you can't get as close as you can with something that's double that, like 150. Yeah, so there's definitely going to be 150 in double 85, but
you get it.
Sound like a proper maths numpty there. But it's you need to be able to sometimes get that close. And so with primes, you're using your feet, you're using your body to get there. And with the zoom, you can do it from one place. And it is why I don't move around a lot. I don't move around a lot during the ceremony or speeches. I usually will pick a place, whether I'm doing photo or video, and shoot the majority from that, or I will actually shoot almost a semicircle around. So let's say I'm doing hybrid by myself and I've got a static camera on a tripod doing the speeches. I will do a semicircle around my framing. So I never go up in front of the camera, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, it's just something to be aware of, I suppose, isn't it, if you're thinking about starting shooting hybrid. But yeah, I think for me, the majority of the time, I think I'll always shoot with the 35 and the 85. I think for me it'll be the speeches that I want that zoom for. So that, I mean, as you mentioned before, like panicking, switching lenses and whatnot. I think for me it'll just be in the bag until that point in the day, just to get some close-up reactions of guests and whatnot. But because especially in like the speeches, it does get a little bit awkward sometimes when you're walking around the tables and like you're standing in front of Grandad whilst his great grandson is doing a speech or whatnot to get the shot. Yeah, I mean, as much as you're there to capture the day, you don't really want to be getting other people's way. And I know some photographers will disagree with that and they'll be like, "Well, I'm there to do a job and I'll stand in front of whoever's way to get the shot." But for me, I think a bit of discretion is always appreciated, isn't it?
It is. That is another one of the reasons. I kind of, you're right, rightly or wrongly, and people will disagree with it, but I never want to have to stand in someone's way so that they don't get to see it in the flesh, just so that I can document it for later. There are times where you have to.
Oh, there is times when you have to.
And there's no avoiding it. And and that if grandma's got her iPad and she thinks she's gonna get a better shot than you're going to have to disappoint grandma and stand in front of her with iPad if she's trying to muscle in. But if it's like, you're right, everyone's sat down at a table, I want to, as much as I can, and sometimes it's impossible to in certain environments, but I would like to be able to shoot from behind people than be in the way. And that's just how I've always done it. And everyone does it differently. So something I was going to say, one of the reasons I think Zoom's got a bad rep back in the day, because like they were a very traditional photographer, wedding photographer lens, weren't they? The 24-70, 70-200. And I think that they weren't that good, and this is prior to me starting in the industry, I would say. I would say that back in the DSLR days, earlier than kind of when technology started to get a lot better, I think a lot of the zoom lenses, they were f4, or like maybe even worse, like 5.6 or worse. They weren't as sharp as primes, and obviously from a low light perspective, you couldn't work with like something that was f4, f5.6 in the dark. Whereas now the kind of zooms I think are a lot better. You know, most of them are 2.8. There are some that are even better than that. ISO on cameras has got better. And so all of these things kind of together, the sharpness of the lens, the fact that they've got a wider aperture, the fact that the cameras can handle low light a lot better. I think that it's almost like, this is just my opinion, by the way. I'm not saying this is how it is, but this is what I thought why everybody still uses primes and doesn't think zooms are any good in the kind of, you know, photography community. It's because at one point that's how it was. And so the kind of legend has been passed down, if you like. And now it's actually not that true. There's more people buying zoom lenses and using zoom lenses because they kind of make a lot of sense. They allow you to do certain things easier because the technology's got better, but there's still this stigma with them, if that makes sense. So people still think the zooms are the only way to get really, really nice shots.
You touched upon like f-stops of, what's yours, a 2.8?
So that Tamron, it's f2 when it's zoomed out. So at 35 to about 60, I think, it's f2. So for me, that's a prime, innit? It's pretty much a prime. And then it goes to 2.8 slowly through that thing. Now it goes to like 2.2 and then it goes to 2.5. And by the time you get to about 100, 110, it's at 2.8. But
because this is what
I don't really notice that.
This is what worries me a little bit about when I think about going into like telephotos, and like the ones that I've seen, like they are starting at like 2.8 for my system. I usually tend to shoot wide open, especially like when it's indoors. So I'll be shooting at like 1.2, 1.4 and focusing solely on like the subject that I'm targeting. I'm not really, I mean, like unless I'm doing group shots, I won't really have the f-stop any further down than that. But so it does worry me a little bit, like the 2.8s and that. So when you're like shooting in low light, is that fine? Are you dealing all right with that? Because I've got the equivalent, I don't know, like a 24 mils, and one's a 1.2 and one's an f2. And I do notice, like when I'm on the dance floor, if I'm shooting on the f2, as much as it's the autofocus is faster on it, the edit afterwards, I don't like it as much as shooting with a 1.4.
Right. And what do you think that is when you're looking at it? Do you think it's the aesthetics? Do you think it's the exposure? What about it?
It's, you know, I think it's the exposure that I've got it at. But like for me, I don't even know how to really put this without sounding like an absolute moron. But like in the edit, it comes across a lot more. There's a lot more contrast to it than I want. Even when you're like bringing the contrast out of it, it's still not quite the same as like the 1.2, 1.4s that I'm shooting with. They're just a lot softer.
Right.
And like even like manipulating it in edit, I just can't quite get the look that I want to achieve. And I'm not sure if that's just the lenses, them specific lenses that I'm using, or if it's because of the f-stops that I'm shooting at.
Right. I take it that, I mean, the 1.4 lens is going to be more expensive than the f2.
Oh yeah, it was double the price. Yeah.
So it'll have better elements.
Oh yeah, there'll be that case to it. I'm just thinking from the light aspect and how much light's getting into your lens and whatnot. But
so what I would say is I've obviously said I've got different lenses. So this is what I will typically have with me at a wedding. The 16 to 35, this is full frame, and 35 to 150. And those lenses, like I haven't always done it like this, but since I got that 35 to 150, I've basically had those two lenses on my camera the entire time at weddings. I think if I go to like 2023 last year, I probably shot nearly every single wedding with those two lenses on my camera 80-90% of the time. And then occasionally I would I've got a 24mm 1.4 and I've got an 85 1.4, and I might use those two for different things. But I actually got to the point where I was realizing it didn't really matter, and I actually liked having the extra. I liked having the extra sort of width with the 16-35 and the flexibility of it, and the 35-150 was absolutely fine when it came to dance floor. So whereas before I might have, for dance floor, nighttime, darkness, I might have put the 85 on and shot wide open at 1.4. I was thinking, do you know what? I actually prefer being able to get in closer for some shots. So whereas 85 is 85, I could actually stand kind of on the periphery of the dance floor for certain things, particularly not really with photo, because with photo, I'm right in the dance floor shooting wide, a wide shot, getting right in the dancing. But when I'm doing video, I do like to get some shots where I'm really close, up, on hands and things. And with being able to zoom into 150, I could just get there, and people wouldn't have a clue that they were being filmed. And that's what when they're not aware that you're there, you get real, your real feeling. So, and the more you zoom in, it goes to 2.8, and at 2.8. Depending on the amount of light on the dance floor, whether I've put lights up or whether it's just the house or DJ lights, I'm definitely going to be I'm very up to 1600 to 2000 ISO. I would say I don't bat an eyelid. And then after that, it's about the quality of the light in the situation will depend how well photos or videos come out. But I would shoot at 8000 ISO on my cameras and know that those images, whether it's photo or video, are usable, no problem.
And that's for both photo and video, did you say? Yeah.
Yeah, and it will depend on the quality of the light. It can be dark, but as long as there's like, I've either put some lights up or the DJ lights are particularly bright, you get that really nice dynamic lighting on the dance floor, then you can shoot at 8000 ISO. Obviously, if it's pitch black and you shoot at 8000 ISO, it's going to be grainy as fuck. But I would say that, if let's say we're shooting ceremony speeches and it's in a dark environment, I will shoot at 2000, 2500 ISO, and I know that all those photos and videos are going to be absolutely fine. I won't worry about the quality of them whatsoever.
Good. So let's talk about, for anyone that's listening and intrigued, talk through what lens you use and when on the day. So starting from like bridal prep, what would you use?
Well, it's a bit boring for me because I've already kind of said I use that 16-35 and I use a 35-150. I'll have two bodies, and I think I'm slightly different to a lot of photographers and videographers because I like really wide shots. Now, they're not all really wide shots, but I just like to include really wide shots.
Including like on bridal prep and whatnot?
Yeah.
Okay.
As in like I like almost an establishing this is what the room looked like with everybody in it having a good time.
So how do you get around the usual bridal prep mess? Or do you just include it in there? Just chuck it in throw it all in one picture?
Yeah, if there's something I can do about it, then I will. And obviously if it seems like the couple are a tidy couple who like things to be very, just right, I will make more effort to do that, and I'll probably shoot tighter. But if I get the vibe that the couple are really chilled and they just want to see things as they are, because that's kind of 70-80% of my couples will be like that. I won't worry so much if there's a freaking Aldi bag in the corner, supermarket bags and like fucking dirty knickers. I'm gonna suggest we get rid of those. But I'm not shooting that on purpose or carelessly. But generally, I think that for me, a bridal prep or a groom prep room, particularly a groom prep room. I mean, let's be honest, like blokes are messy bastards. For me, it is what it is. Like, we're not saying that that's going to so I should actually give some context to this. So for a shorter highlight film that might be shared on social media, I'm not necessarily going to use those shots. Or for like, you know, sort of a blog post or Instagram share of photos. But for I do take documentary quite literally. So I think 70, 80, 90% of my couples when I'm doing video have a doc edit, which again is not something that's regular. I don't think that's particularly popular amongst the videography community these days. But nearly everybody wants me to get them a doc edit who hires me.
That's interesting.
So I'm making that short highlight film. This is probably a really good different topic, so I won't go too far into it. But essentially, I will be shooting for the highlight film, but I document the entire day. So I use much longer clips. So whereas most people will shoot 3-5 seconds, I might shoot 30 seconds to a couple of minutes on some shots. I might move the camera around a little bit and then I'll chop it up in post. But this is why I'm using wider shots, because I'm trying to, whilst I'm getting closer shots, which I'll have loads of as well, and I do focus on details and little, you know, sort of small, interesting parts, you know, typically to how like you would shoot. I'll go tight and get those, but I also get the wider stuff because I like to switch between, and I will use more of the tighter stuff in the highlight edit, and I might use more of the wider stuff in the doc edit. Go.
Interesting.
So what about you with prep?
With prep, I'll shoot practically everything on the 35mm because it's a pretty chilled environment, isn't it? So if I need to get close up, I'll get close up, and it's not really much of a problem. Not going to be in anyone's way. But yeah, I don't really shoot with the 85. Maybe for a couple of detail shots of the dress or whatnot to get a bit more depth of field, a bit more layers in it. I might shoot with the 85, but yeah, with the bridal prep, I tend to shoot with the 35 pretty much. I mean, like, I'm a bit picky when it comes to messing rooms, so I'll either tend to shoot the angles where the mess isn't, or crop in to hide it. Yeah, I mean, like, there's been points where I have tidied stuff away, but I almost fear that I don't want to be spending a good 10-15 minutes making a bedroom look immaculate or a room look immaculate and be missing out on the moments. So yeah, I think it's more the fact of just picking the right lens to be able to hide that mess for me, really. So yeah, I guess it really just depends on the room size and what sort of state the room is as well, really. But yeah, tend to be the 35, sorry.
I mean, I definitely don't. If I'm putting together like a highlight film or, you know, the best images, I'm not going to pick the ones with shit in the background. No. I'm either going to crop it out, or I am going to have had some tighter shots that are in there as well. I mean, right. So what I should also probably say is the way that I capture, because I started off with videography. I mean, I suppose we both did, but you kind of focused more on photo the last few years, and I focused more on video. So I tend to think of everything as a sequence. So I get a wide, mid, and a tight of everything. And like my wife, Lindsay, she had no experience or interest even in photo and video.
And you
I
just
taught
forced
her
her into
how
it.
to shoot. Yeah, I mean, it's slave labor, isn't it? And I just taught her that whenever you're shooting, I don't know what I'm going to do in the edit, because, you know, I'm not shooting it, nor have I actually worked it all out yet. So just get me a tight, a mid, and a wide of everything. And so she basically shoots on she used to shoot on a 24-70, and then we got a Tamron which was 28-75. She just loves that lens, and so whenever she's been working with me, she uses the 28-75 2.8, and she just has that on her camera all day. apart from the odd time when I'll say, can we swap because I need to use that lens for something? Yeah, we do it like that.
Yeah.
And with a 28-75, she can get a wide, a mid, and a tight of everything, and that's why she likes using that lens.
And when she does that to get the distances, does she just stay in the same place to get it as well, or does she move about?
I would say that she might move about to get a different angle, a different perspective. The great thing about Lindsay shooting is that she didn't come from a trained background, so she didn't know any of the rules, if you like.
It's not a bad thing.
So whereas a lot of us might have the thing in our head of like, it's really unflattering to shoot up at somebody, or it's, there's certain angles you avoid, certain situations you would avoid. She's really good at actually finding creative angles that I wouldn't have thought of, because it would have just been a no. And then when I look at the shot, I'm like,
that kind of works.
Why did she shoot? Oh, why did she shoot?
Why can I see that? Why can I see that guy's bogeys?
So but it kind of works, and it actually influenced me in a way, because I started to like wide shots shooting from low down, because you get this really epicness about it. Do you know what I mean? And I know you'll get that, because I've seen you like an epic portrait, don't you? Like quite wide, atmospheric,
a good silhouette on a wide is
silhouette on a and I love those images that you make. So it's you're not sticking to normal angles, nor are you sticking to normal focal lengths when you're doing that. You are going wide and you are going far away and getting a lot of the the scene almost like a landscape.
It is that. So for ceremony then, what are you practically just shooting one lens throughout the whole day, really, or are you mixing it up?
Yeah, so the 35-150, it pretty much gets everything. It depends if I'm doing hybrid or whether I'm just focusing on one photo or video, because I will use different lenses in different ways with hybrid. Like the 16-35 or the 24 will be a wide video for the ceremony. And then I'll basically use the 35-150 to get different angles, different focal lengths, both of photo and video. We touched on it, didn't we, last week when we were talking, a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about how you shoot hybrid in the challenges. It was kind of like you wait, you take a few photos, and then you kind of like, I know I've got photos of the ring now, and now I need to get some closer up video stuff. So that's how I'm using that 35-150, and then the wide is probably video recorder, like a safe angle. But I'll also potentially have one of the cameras, a wide that I'm carrying that's not on a tripod, and I might get a wider of the room, because I like at least one photo where you've got both sets of family on each side. With the bride and groom in the middle. Do you know what I mean? Like, and that's another reason why I love the 16-35, because I could get a prime, I could get a 14mm or an 18mm prime, but the 16-35 gives me options, and 16mm is about as wide as I want to go before I start, things start getting looking a bit weird in the corners. So I can get the full, most ceremony rooms, no matter how, because what it's like, most ceremony rooms, some are wide, big rooms,
different shapes
some
and
are really
sizes.
tight, tiny rooms.
I think
so. The 16mm gives me that.
For me, going off route a little bit, kind of made me think about one of the other reasons why I don't really tend to shoot with telephotos is like the continuity I struggle a little bit with. So with the 35 and the 85, like I'll shoot that both photo and film. So I know what the gallery is going to look like, and it's always going to have the same sort of aesthetic, same sort of look. Whereas if I'm shooting telephoto, the focal lengths are going to be different all the time for me. Especially, like if it was just shooting photo or just shooting video, I'm not really sure if there would be that much of an issue. But if I was shooting hybrid, in my OCD head, it wouldn't the continuity potentially wouldn't be there because I'd be at totally different focal lengths throughout the whole day. I mean, like I should probably say, like for if I'm shooting film alone, I'll stick with it 85mm. I don't shoot anything but unless it's like the dance floor, or I think I might have mentioned this in one of the other podcasts, but unless it's the dance floor or detail shots, everything else is 85mm.
Right.
So yeah, for continuity wise, as much as like I like the idea, and I might even go down the route of telephoto, I just need to figure out how to keep that look and the continuity of like delivering the galleries. Do you see where I'm coming from?
Absolutely.
Am I being over the top? Am I being OCD?
No, I don't. No, I think what that is, and I know that when I look at my work and I look at other people's work, and I know when people, I can tell when people shoot pretty much 85 or 50 all day, and they don't mix the focal lengths. When they're doing video, I'm talking about. If photos are different, I think photos, you have to have more than one focal length, because you can't shoot freaking groups on an 85 unless you can get really far back. But, you know, there's different tools for different things. Whereas with film, you can put a film together using one focal length, using one lens, absolutely. And that's what they do in cinema. They, you know, the cinematographer will choose a focal length or a set of focal lengths that they'll use. They use prime lenses, they don't use zooms. This is why, you know, a lot of filmmakers, videographers will use primes, because that's the authentic cinematography way of doing things. But I see weddings different, you see. I see weddings as I'm documenting someone's day. So I worry less about continuity of the visual, and I think about, I just want to make sure if something happens,
you can capture
that I want to include in the film, that I've caught it. I don't really care as much about how it appears to look as the fact that I captured it. And I worry about how it looks later in the edit. And if I, you know, I could show you a bunch of my videos, my films. They'll all have some wide shots in. And then I could show you a bunch of other people's, yours, somebody else's films. They'll have no wide shots in. And yours will look aesthetically more pleasing to the eye. But if I didn't have those wide shots in, I would feel like my video, my film was missing something.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, an interesting one. Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, like, another topic to have, but yeah, might get myself a telephoto. Who knows? I'll be saying this in like 5 years' time. Everyone will be just like, buy a fucking telephoto. Jesus, you've been going on for 5 years. But yeah, I'm tempted.
You know, don't get me wrong. Like, I actually, the 85 on the dance floor is my favorite lens because when I'm doing video, anyway, when I'm making a film, the 85 on the dance floor, because I love the idea of being able to switch it. You know, again, we could talk. This is another topic, but we could talk about autofocus and manual focus when filmmaking. And again, I know that most wedding filmmakers will use manual focus, whereas my lenses, my cameras have always had decent autofocus, and so I've kind of used autofocus more than manual focus. You know, let's just say a couple getting married, bride coming down aisle, I can not focus better than my camera.
Absolutely not, no.
So I let my camera do it. You know, I can touch the screen and track, and it follows the bride down. So I don't want to manually focus when I know I can't do it as good as the camera. But the dance floor, I actually like to get the kind of feeling of the focus moving in and out. So I'll manually focus and I'll go on the 85 because it's 1.4 and it's really shallow depth of field. And I kind of use it in that way. So that's one of the ways in which I would use a prime.
Yeah. I mean, for me, the dance floor is kind of the opposite way around for me. I think we might have touched base on this on one of the other podcasts.
Really?
Actually.
Is that it? You do it the opposite way around?
I shoot like wide on the dance floor, mainly for the fact most of the time I mean, like, what I'll do is I'll stand in front of like the band or the DJ and shoot the bride and groom with the guests behind them. So we've got a shot of all the guests rather than them with the DJ and all the DJ sounds behind them. So for me, when I'm doing that, to use an 85, it's going to have to be one hell of a big dance floor. Like, otherwise I can't get it in. So I'm shooting on like a 24 on the dance floor. And I practically just literally use the 24 the whole way through the night. Once the dance is on, my other lenses are away. It's 24mm the whole night, really. I mean, like, there's been maybe one or two occasions where, like, yeah, I have been at venues where it's huge and I can get the 85 out. And actually, I did shoot a video with the 85 on the dance floor, and it was the opening scene to the film because it just looked amazing, like with the light behind it and the flare coming out and stuff. It was beautiful, but.
Thicky Priory,
yeah. But
I like that.
But like the amount of times where that situation can happen, I guess it's just you pick and choose when you're in the venue and you see what the situation is, don't you? But the majority of the time, I've only got maybe 3-4 meters in front of me until the bride and groom stood there. So the 85 is too tight for me, really. But yeah.
I mean, to kind of clarify, first dance. It is a bit different to the rest of the night. So with the first dance, it will depend on the space. And it also different if I'm just doing photo, just doing video, or doing hybrid. So if I was doing hybrid solo, I would have a wide on the dance floor. I'd always have a wide, whatever I'm doing, I'm always going to have a wide of the dance floor. So I'll either use that 16-35 or I'll use my 24mm. And I'll always have that to cut to. You know, it'll be on a tripod. Potentially it'll have to be up high so it's above people's heads. If there's a good place where I can put it where no one's going to stand in front of it because it's probably unmanned, I will have it fairly low so that it's a nice angle. But I will always have that to cut to. But with the other cameras, you know, I'll have wide as an option, but I'll also like some tight stuff. And certainly if I was doing photography, like what I've started doing when I'm doing photo for the dance floor, I would say as soon as it gets to the night do, 80-90% of my shots are going to be like dragging the shutter. Yeah. I'm not actually going to shoot a lot of it, you know, it so that it's not blurry, because I just think that yes, there's definitely some photos during the first dance that you want to be really sharp. And there will be some other photos that you would like to be sharp. But I feel like the dance floor and the energy on the dance floor, it feels wrong if I'm not dragging the shot. So I just drag the shutter on nearly all the shots after, you know, but it's totally different for video, because for video, when I said about the 85, I want more detail of like hands in the air of people's faces. But I'll also have another camera that I'm getting wide, you know, just like I said with everything else, I'm getting wide stuff as well to mix into it.
I think like hearing like what we're both talking about with lenses and stuff, is like as cringy as it sounds as well. I think when you pick your lens, you're almost picking, you need to pick your lens for how you're going to tell a story as well, aren't you? So like, for example, I was at a wedding the other week and the mother of the groom was trying to hide from me all day long. So the majority of the shots of her were on the 85 because if I got close to her, she turned her back on me. She didn't want it, and she was kind of making a bit of a joke about it and having a bit of a laugh. So I made it my mission to ninja and shoot and capture some like nice shots of her to like say like, look, you can take a nice photo. But like later on in the night, so I was shooting at the 85 for most of the day. After a couple of drinks, she was getting a bit closer and a bit closer. And by the end of the night, I was on my widest lens. And like, for anyone that's watching this, like I was holding the camera and she was holding my wrists and her face was in front of the lens. So like, it's almost telling a story, isn't it? Like in the morning, you're distant. When on the nighttime after a couple of drinks, she's in my face. And I mean, like it made quite a good like scene of photos from morning to evening. And yeah, the story, it was kind of like the story of her day, really, just from the focal lengths that I was using. So I suppose when if that makes sense, I suppose when you're picking the type of lenses you want to shoot at a wedding, you almost have to think a little bit of how you want to tell the story of the day as well, don't you, really?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's why I use different focal lengths rather than just sticking to, you know, one or the other. because the day, not only is every day different, but days do evolve.
Yeah.
And people and situations evolve, environments evolve, you're in different types of rooms, different types of spaces. So I like to be able to show the space in different ways. But that what you've just said is like the perfect example. Like one of the notes I've made is how experience has changed, the way that you use lenses. And what you've just said there is something that you can't possibly know when you first start out, because you don't have the experience of being in those situations where what you've done there is been like, well, if I want to get some photos of it, I've got to use the 85. But then, and it might not have been how you would have done it, because you already said in prep you use a 35 usually, but you've kind of adapted to the situation. And then by the end of the day, you're getting like probably what are some really great shots, really wide with them really close up to you, and they will look completely different.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think it does come down to experience as well. Like I think a lot of people do start out and are more comfortable using telephotos than they are using primes, and I totally get that. I mean, like that's pretty much the route I took when I first started out, and I wouldn't say there's anything wrong with that at all. I think if anyone is going to go into like wedding photography, is to have a go with both, really. See what works for you, what doesn't. Or have a mix of both. Even I wouldn't get too snobby about it. After 10 years of shooting it, I'm not snobby about it. I'm just set in my ways of, I know how to shoot with these lenses, so I'm kind of stuck with them. Whereas I know some people, as we've mentioned before, are primes are better than telephoto, or the old school views of telephoto aren't as quick or sharp as primes. But I think, as you said before, these days there isn't much difference within quality. So it's just what you want, really, isn't it? How you want to work and what's comfortable for you.
I think there isn't a wrong way, is there? Not. There isn't a wrong way. You've got the way that you've developed for it to work for you. So for anybody coming into the industry who's newer and they don't have that kind of experience of using different lenses and being in different situations, they should, like you've said, try things and not just go off what they've heard someone who's got their own way of doing it, because there isn't a wrong way. It's just that people have different ways, and if it works for you, then that's the way that you should do it, because you're obviously doing a great job. It's working for you and you're telling great stories. But for me, they're just tools, like the lenses. It sounds a bit cliched as that, but for me, the lenses are just the cameras, the lenses, all of the equipment. It's just a tool. And for me, I focus, and again, this is another podcast, but I focus more on understanding the wedding and understanding the people. And actually the camera, the lens, I'm just using them as some way of getting what I want out of that, to be able to show people it. It's not, if you said to me tomorrow, you can't have your 35 to 150, you've got to shoot on this 85 all day, that'd be quite exciting for me. But at the same time,
when's your next
wouldn't.
wedding?
Well, maybe we should set ourselves these.
I've done it before. I've shot.
Maybe we should set ourselves.
I've shot an entire wedding on the 23mm, and it was a hybrid as well. Or the 35mm equivalent.
Right.
And
what happened? Did you have the lens break?
No, they wanted it. They literally said.
Right.
They were from, long story short, they were from London, got married at Allerton Castle, and I don't know if it was her that was the photographer or he was the photographer, but they literally just wanted documentary style, and they said, what's your widest lens? And I was like, it's the 35. I mean, I did have a wider one, but so she was like, can you just capture the whole day, hybrid photo and film on the 23? And I think, funnily enough, I don't know if that's where it came from, with like the continuity of like keeping the same focal length throughout. I'm not quite sure where that came from in my head, but I mean, like the results were nice. And funnily enough, I don't know why. I mean, it was a good film, that, but not blowing my own trumpet or anything, but I always shot with, like, even though I shot with the 35 there, I still shoot with the 85 predominantly. And I think that's mainly now because I've been doing it for so long. When couples book me, I have a slight fear that like
That's what you think
that's
they're
what they're
expecting.
expecting. So if I then produce something different, so it's a bit of a catch 22 or whatever the saying is. But yeah, I might start slowly going back into the 23. It was a nice lens to shoot with actually. So yeah.
I mean, to be honest, mate, that's what's so freeing for me, because I wouldn't have even thought of that. Like, I'm literally like, I shoot on, I don't know, at one point, like I say, I had, I don't know, 12 to 14 lenses. You know, I didn't use them all in one wedding, but, you know, I had a bunch of lenses, most of which I never used, but I did use multiple different lenses. I've used zooms pretty much the whole time I've been doing it. God knows what focal lengths most of the shots are at, because I'm just zooming in and out depending on how I want it framed. And yeah, you could say that that's a really shit way of doing it. That's not a purist way of doing it. But like, no couple has ever said to me, it looks a bit funky, does this, mate? You know, what have you been shooting on?
Yeah, so maybe that's
really...
another bit of food for thought, isn't it? If you're looking at going into like primes or telephoto, is that side of it as well, really? Because I must say, like, a lot of my couples, when they book me and they see my galleries, they know what they're going to get, because every gallery is exactly the same focal lengths. I don't use any different in the last 7 years, 6-7 years. I haven't used anything different. So when they see a gallery, if they get something different, something's kind of gone amiss a little bit, if you see what I mean. So for me to now change into telephoto, I don't know, maybe it's me thinking too much about it, but would the couples see a difference? I think the way I'm thinking about using a telephoto would be no, because I'd just be using it on like the speeches, really.
On those speeches.
But yeah, something to consider when you're looking for lenses, I suppose, isn't it? Is are you going to stick with these lenses? And if so, make sure you're happy and comfortable with the focal lengths that you've got, especially if they're the primes. Because
I mean, what you're talking about there is the same kind of territory as you have this edit. You know,
it is exactly the same.
This colour kind of look,
and then if you change your edit,
you go all of a sudden, you just
change your edit
to a completely different.
I mean, like I have done that, and like you won't see from my Instagram now because I've archived the majority of like the older photos. But I think everyone goes through stages of like different edits and whatnot. I've simplified mine down quite a lot to almost pretty natural now. Or like skin tones and whatnot have completely changed. So yeah, it's a bit of that process. You've got to kind of slowly filter through it, don't you, to get and drop. I mean, like I did do it on a wedding where I just dropped the complete gallery in a totally different style, and like I took that risk thinking.
And what did they say?
They didn't know a difference. And that was
because
a hype.
I don't think
they're looking at it. No, I mean there was one point where it was a drastic change from like quite heavily edited to barely a tweak from out of the camera edited. So yeah, I mean, like if someone knew what they were seeing and whatnot, maybe there would have been an issue there. But I kind of judged it on a couple that I knew would be totally cool with it either way. And if they came back to me and said, I'm not too sure about these, you know, I could have literally just dropped a filter on it and said, oh, like, yeah, listen, I'm experimenting with a new preset. Thanks for your feedback. Here's your re-edited pictures or something, and they'd have been happy with that. They'd have been cool. But yeah, I suppose it is the same. We're blabbering on about, aren't we? But I am. But yeah, it's the same sort of situation, isn't it? If you're going to be picking a lens, you kind of need to, if it's going to be a drastic change, you need to kind of slowly blend that into your portfolio and whatnot, so couples can see where you're heading, really.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, just from my perspective, if I'd never used 16mm, because that's quite extreme wide, if I'd never given anybody any photos or video shots that were really wide like that, and suddenly you started seeing those in my work, that would look quite odd, you know, because it is very wide. But I've kind of been doing that for years, so. You know, if people saw a whole gallery of mine or watched a full film, they're not going to be like, well, that looks very odd. Yeah. You know, they're just going to be like, well, yeah, that's probably one of the reasons. So, I know for a fact that most of the people that hire me, and this is not me kind of like saying I'm doing something special, I genuinely know I'm doing something different to what most people are doing.
I mean, your edits are different, definitely.
So, but when people are telling me, when people are inquiring with me and booking me, they're saying that, you know, like, it's not a case of like, they're not saying things like, we thought your work was like the most beautiful thing we've ever seen. What they're saying is, your work just looked different.
Stood out.
And it stood out because, and, you know, the music you were using and all the rest of it. So, and that's exactly what I'm trying to do. I'm not, because it'd be boring to me to kind of, I like the mixture, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So what would you,
which some people
if people
don't.
haven't seen your work that are listening, what style would you say your photos and videos are? Especially your videos. I think your videos are I mean, like, from my view, like, my videos, I almost go down the route of like documentary cinematic, where like what would you go down the route of saying your videos are?
I've basically spent the last few years, I did use the word cinematic originally. I've spent the last few years not using the word cinematic because it's one of those words where I'm not really sure what it means in the community, and I'm not really sure
It just sounds really good,
what it means to couples.
Yeah.
It does. It does. And I want to use it, but I do think that a cinematic style tends to be associated, particularly with amongst peers, if you like, tends to be associated with that more gentle,
well, it's like
soft and
shallow depth of field,
beautiful,
slow motion type.
Shallow depth of field.
Yeah. And yours definitely isn't that. Yours is, I mean, like, I've seen some of your edits and they're quite fast, aren't they? Quite quick burst.
Yeah, but that's another thing. I could show you, you know, a bunch of different films that would all look different. Right. And so I can think of plenty of them where they are very slow and cinematic. So some of them are, you know, The Couple or that we're going in a way different topic.
Keep going.
Podcast topic here. This is a good one to talk about in more detail. But there's a lot of them that would fall under that. You know, The Couple, the location, the feel of the day, what they told me they liked, will influence. That'll be a slow cinematic edit.
Yeah,
and I will show that on my website. I'll show that on my Instagram, and then I'll have, you know, another one that'll be like, it'll almost look like some kind of freaking crazy music video.
Yeah.
And that's because that's, you know, what the couple wanted and what vibe they were going for, because they'd seen that I'd done that for somebody else. But also, if I like creating the slow ones, I like creating the fast ones. I just don't want to create the same thing every week.
Yeah. I mean, you're a man of many skills, because you're almost creating a unique experience for each individual couple, whereas like the majority of us have a style and we stick to that, and it's almost like a template, isn't it? So for me, the way I shoot videos, no matter what the couple have booked me because they've seen them videos that I've shot in the past. So even if they're a wild, crazy, out there couple, it's still going to be a cinematic style. And I mean, I'll try and implement their feel to it and whatnot, but at the end of the day, that's how I shoot, and that's why they've booked me. But you almost create a really personalized video for each client, don't you? That's a really tricky thing to do, because you're almost challenging yourself for multiple different styles, really, aren't you? Like, if you're feeding off the couple and they're quite chilled out and relaxed, you might be thinking, all right, I'll go down the route of a bit more slow tempered and relaxed. But if a lot of your couples that I've seen are really upbeat and wild, you're going to create an individual video just for them. It's not going to be, I mean, you must spend quite a lot of time in the edit just to get it right and the feel of it for each couple.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the wedding and it depends on what I'm trying to achieve. I'll be honest, I can do a slower cinematic edit so quickly.
Yeah.
And part of the reason is because I use fewer shots. You know, you'll kind of know that. It's like, if you've got those banger shots that are the beautiful, perfect ones, that's what you want to show. Whereas a lot of my faster edits will actually have really messy shots in them. shots that you wouldn't typically want to use, or there's something that's like, that doesn't quite work, but I'll use it anyway, and it'll have some kind of transition or some kind of twist on it so that it doesn't, it'll only be on the screen for a second or two. So you won't even notice all the shit that's wrong with it, the bad composition, or the bad lighting, or there's shit in the background of the shot. It's a moment of the story, almost. So I'm like, right, that needs to go in, but I don't really like it. But how can I make it so that it works, but I don't have it, So, I mean, again, this is like this is definitely a different. We should definitely do a podcast on our different styles and how we do that, because yes, what you're saying is right. It is a challenge to do that, but it's also about what people want. And there are plenty of people that want what you do, and then there are people that want what I do. And that's why it's such a great, industry, because you don't have to do, and I'm probably doing something that's in the minority of what people
You don't
want.
need to be a sheep and follow the crowd. You can diversify.
Well, it's not really that. It's more a case of, like, for me, what I thought was, I'm going up against people here that are really good at what they do. So if I was going to start making those really amazing cinematic edits, I've got to become a much better technical filmmaker, and I've got to pay a lot more attention to being a good technical filmmaker. And I don't, because I like the idea of doing photo and the idea of doing video and the idea of hybrid and solo hybrid shooting and doing a bit of commercial work and basically totally mixing it up. That's how I felt about it. I was like, I am more of a jack of all trades, master of none. That's what I've always been like. So for me, that's the reason I do what I do. I like to mix it up. It keeps me interested. And I like to be able to give that personalized, bespoke thing for it. But I know that my films will never be as good as some of the people that are creating those really beautiful edits, because they have spent more time on, I'm going to get these, absolutely nail these shots.
Yeah. So do you think you're more of an expert and spend more time during the day on your camera work or on the edit?
Edit, the camera work on the day is instinctive. I'm just capturing it as it happens. Obviously, for me, more of the skill is in being in the right place, right time, using the right piece of equipment at the right time, having the right settings at the right time. It's instinctive stuff, understanding people, like sort of thinking, what are people going to do? That's where I see it. I don't see it as like, right, I'm going to spend 10 minutes on a shot or whatever. I'm not saying everyone does that, but what I mean is, like, I'm not looking for perfect. I'm looking for pure documentary. And then in the edit, that's why at the start of my edits, whether I'm doing photo or video, honestly, when I first color photo gallery, I'm so stressed out. And now I know we're going into some right topics. We should probably cut this podcast. In fact, I probably will cut it in half and make this another
Everyone's
episode.
Like, no, keep talking.
Well, no, we'll use it, but I'll just, I'll cut it. We'll probably do a little intro and chop it into another one, because it's going to be too long and it's going to be going off on a complete different tangent. But essentially, what I kind of do on a day is document it as it is. In the edit, then I'll look through, particularly like with photos, I'll look through the gallery, I'll just be like culling them, thinking, oh gosh, I'm not happy with this. By the end of editing it, I'm like, that told the day perfectly. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's because once you start to kind of warm into, well, I did capture it as it happened. This is what these people are like. I'm not making them, I'm not a Vogue or name another, fashion magazine. Whereas I know that your sort of work probably leans more towards the fashion, not completely, but more towards the fashion aspect, and what is considered kind of high end and cinematic is more fashion led.
Absolutely. I mean, off the top of this, before we shut off, maybe it might be useful for people out there that are curious to see how we actually go through the process of like culling the shots that we use, and even like a quick example of the edit. So I think I'm right saying that we're going to try and start putting little bits of advice and like training on the Facebook group, and maybe even like some little snippets on Instagram. Tell me if I'm wrong there, Jules.
Yeah.
But
No,
yeah,
mate,
maybe
that's what we're going to do.
yeah.
Ideally, yeah.
Maybe we'll start doing stuff like
If
that,
we
because I
can-
think that would be quite useful for someone to see the process of how we, even from the start, how we've captured the shots, why we've culled them, why we've chose the image that we have chose and the videos that we have chose to go into the final gallery and films. That could be potentially quite useful. I mean, like, it would have been useful for me however many years ago. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, where would you have? You wouldn't have ever seen somebody showing you that live time and explaining why they made different choices. So, absolutely, we'll definitely be doing some live stuff that we will be building a Facebook group around. Probably put it out live on YouTube and Facebook, and then we'll have snippets of stuff like this that we can put on the Instagram feed so that people can see, you know, if they just want to watch a 60-second, this is what I did with this image and why I did it, you know, then we can show them quick time.
Yeah, exactly. Friday night, have you got a wedding tomorrow?
I haven't, mate. I've still got a couple of weeks
days.
until it all kicks off. But I had a really great day today. I got two people booking, which, I can't remember last time I got 2 bookings in one day, which is crazy. Like, one of them's for this year.
Yeah, there's still
it's in the
people
Lake
coming
District.
through.
It's only a couple of hours.
What were they called?
It's you know. Why did they inquire with you?
Have you pinched my clients? Hang on, before you hang up. Wait there. Chat to the audience while I'm searching these guys.
Well, I'll do the little call to action. So, Kieran and I are going to be working really hard to grow the podcast, bring loads of great content to help photographers learn how to do video, videographers learn how to do photography, and create successful and sustainable hybrid businesses. So wherever you're listening and watching this, please click the follow or subscribe button so that new episodes will make their way to your feed. And we're going to play the song of the week now, as Kieran tells me that I've stolen his freaking client. So the song of the week from MUSICBED is Starry Dream by Blomqvist. I don't even know if I pronounced that right, but it's a short one. It's classical piano, really nice slow start build up, perfect for a love story with a intense edge to it. Kind of like what's going to happen to me and Kieran potentially now.
Are you ready for this?
And it would suit a slightly quicker cut with a bit of passion.
We need a quick cut after this.
But still
one,
keeping
Jules.
things
We need a
classy.
quick cut. Lydia.
Oh,
Oh,
no.
That would have been so
not
funny.
Lydia.
Oh well, it was worth a shot.
it
That'd
would,
have been great.
but thankfully it isn't.
You can have her.
Do you know what, mate? This has been a really good one. I'm glad I didn't steal your client.
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't.
I hope she still books
We'll
with
do
you.
another podcast now. So.
And yeah, it's been a good one. This, I think, I hope people are listening to this because this is good stuff,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah.
I'd love to listen to this.
Oh yeah. Well, I hope so. Anyway, I hope people find it useful. Yeah.
Cool. Right. See you again on next
I
one.
might
mate.
pinch this music for my next video. Actually, thanks. See you later.